Okay, thank you very much indeed, and thanks very much to the organisers for inviting me here. I'll say straight away, I'm first of all an outsider to the UDO project, and also I'm very much a little lawyer. And I don't really usually work in the field of political participation, but I suppose my main qualification for being here is that I've just finished quite a big project on the Citizens Initiative, the results of which will be published in the Common Market Law Review next month. So I just thought what I'd do is quickly share a few of the findings from that project on a sort of legal analysis of the new Citizens Initiative as set out in the treaties and in the Regulation 211 of 2011. I suppose what I do in the paper is I start out by identifying what I think are the two main potential, at least theoretical benefits of the Citizens Initiative as it's been created over the last couple of years. And the first is obviously they offer an agenda-setting voice to citizens, which is capable of challenging entrenched political preferences, not just of reinforcing what we all want to hear already or know already, but of actually offering new perspectives and different perspectives on what the established political actors would prefer. And the second obvious benefit, again, is to contribute to a greater sense of ownership over the EU by its own citizens, and especially in the longer term, to foster a sort of a more genuine European public space. Now, those are very obvious, and they're the benefits we're always told result from direct democracy. But I suppose what I do in my paper is I actually look at the detail of the treaties and the regulation and ask just how far those benefits are likely to emerge in practice. And I suppose my conclusions aren't necessarily as optimistic as maybe some other people's would be. So I'll just very briefly deal with the three main issues, I think, which arise from a lawyer's perspective on the Citizens Initiative. And the first question is, who does the Citizens Initiative actually represent? And the rule, we all know it, is fairly easy. It's EU citizens who are of an age to vote in the European elections, and that obviously includes people who are below 18 in the vast majority of member states. It also excludes long-term resident third country nationals, and those are very deliberate policy choices which were made by the treaty drafters and the legislature. I suppose what I do is focus in on two things which are maybe less deliberate and less obvious. And the first is the idea that certain categories of adult EU citizens themselves are effectively excluded from the scope of the Citizens Initiative, not deliberately, but just because of the way in which the legislation is being drafted. And this all relates to the way that citizens are attributed to member states for the purposes of expressing their support for a Citizens Initiative. An easiest example is one of the, 500,000, 750,000 UK nationals who live in Spain. They can't associate themselves with a British Citizens Initiative or a Citizens Initiative in Britain because they're not resident there. But equally, they can't express support for a Citizens Initiative in Spain because they don't have a Spanish passport or identity card. So you have an entire group of migrants, and it would be true with lots of other combinations of nationalities and lots of other combinations of countries. Citizens who have chosen to exercise their free movement rights under the treaties, who are then deprived of any opportunity, legally any opportunity, to support a Citizens Initiative. And I suppose I make the argument that those provisions in the regulations are probably unlawful and should be annulled by the Court of Justice. The other important finding, I suppose, on this topic is simply, again, very obvious, but we need to demonstrate these very obvious things, that in reality the Citizens Initiative is really an initiative for organised civil society. It does seem, given the many legal and logistical hurdles which are imposed by the regulation, it seems pretty unlikely that a sort of spontaneous group of individual citizens will actually succeed in launching and finally submitting a Citizens Initiative. And from that point of view, the Citizens Initiative definitely gives a voice to citizens, but maybe it's a representative voice rather than a fully participatory one. So on that first issue, I suppose, there are limits in terms of the regulation to how far the Citizens Initiative can realise its theoretical benefits. On the second main issue, I suppose this is about the scope of the Citizens Initiative, what it can actually ask the Commission to talk about. And again, there are some fairly interesting distinctions which really limit the capacity of the Citizens Initiative to influence different areas of EU policy making. For example, the regulation refers to Commission proposals, And so it's not clear how far a citizens' initiative could relate to a Commission Autonomous Act, such as a delegated regulation under Article 290 of the TFEU. Similarly, it refers to action for the purposes of implementing the treaties. It's not clear that a citizens' initiative could ask the Union not to act, or to refrain from acting, or to stop acting in a particular field. Another big question is the idea of implementing the treaties. Well, what about amending the treaties? What if there's a widespread desire among citizens not to implement, but to actually change the treaties? And again, it's not clear how a citizens' initiative would be received by the Commission. And finally, there is the issue of the Commission itself. The idea that a citizens' initiative has to relate to the Commission's power. It can't, for example, relate to the powers of the High Representative in the field of the CFSP. It couldn't relate, for example, to the accession of a new member state, even though there may well be major areas of EU development which are of genuine concern to individuals. So again, thinking about the scope of the citizens' initiative, there are certain limits to how far its benefits can be realised in practice. The third and final main issue is the role of institutional mediation in the execution of the citizens' initiative. Obviously, the citizens' initiative looks weak on paper. You suggest something to the Commission has no obligation to do anything other than respond, but it certainly doesn't have to take any action. And even if the Commission does take action, there's then obviously a second round of deliberation by the Council and the European Parliament, at least if the measure is legislative in nature. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in principle, but it obviously does mean that on paper the initiative is fairly weak. And what that means is that initiatives which do genuinely want to directly contradict settled preferences by the institutions, or initiatives which do want to raise issues which have been neglected by the institutions, or even simply want to pose a different settlement of values from the one which is currently followed by the Union, will ultimately be at the discretion of the institutions themselves whether they want to react in any way to them. And obviously its agenda-setting potential is therefore relatively limited. I suppose that means the overall conclusion in my paper is that, somewhat paradoxically, the citizens' initiative is a very valuable innovation, and it's obviously one to be welcomed, but it still remains ultimately a sort of an elite tool of direct democracy, and I think that's a paradox that we'll have to work out over the years to come. I'll finish there. If you do want to know more, the Common Market Law Review in December 2011 has a 45-page analysis, but I think that's probably enough from me. Thanks very much.